Good morning, councillors, and welcome to the City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting of the 19th of July. I declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. I'd like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcasted and audio recorded, and I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. Now, I believe we have all councillors in the room, so there's no leaves of absence to declare. And before we get stuck into Invest Slogan, I'm just going to very quickly ask if anyone has any GB for Stephen Ball, the Development Assessment Manager.
Yes.
You do? Okay, go on, knock yourself out. Sorry, Stephen. Is that the MOU one that you want to do? Okay, we can hold that one till after. That's okay, because Stephen will still be here afterwards. I just thought if there's any quick questions we can knock out now. Stephen, do you have any GB for us? No? Okay, we'll just save the MOU item for afterwards. Alrighty, Medi. Board, Stephen, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourselves, and then we'll go into confidential to discuss the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we had hoped that this would be the first time you saw the full board of Invest Logan. However, one of our number, Craig Newnham, was unfortunately has been struck down with the Sydney sneeze, and he unfortunately couldn't make it. But I am pleased to say that two of my healthier fellow directors are here with us this morning. First of all, Annabelle Pegram.
Good morning.
Annabelle was one of the founding directors alongside with me of Invest Logan, so it's great that she's here. You would probably have seen her smiling face on iPads at various events during the COVID experience. And also Brendan O'Farrell, so he's our newest appointment and already proving his worth as we move into a stronger investment focus. So it's great to have Brendan here too. And as I said, Craig Newnham, he sends his serious apologies. He was so hoping to be here, but he's stuck down south of the border at the moment.
All good, thank you very much. I note that item 4.1 is a confidential report. It is considered necessary to take discussions of this report into a closed session as the information is commercial and in confidence. Do any councillors, before I move into confidential, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, would a councillor like to move me into confidential, please? Thank you, Councillor Bradley, seconded by Mayor Power. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously with the exception of Councillor Bennon. How would you vote? Thank you, Councillor Bennon. Councillors, that motion has been carried. We will now pause the live stream but continue audio recording for internal record keeping purposes. in and get the thumbs up to know when we're recording. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're now back in open session. I note that a confidential PowerPoint was presented to the meeting by the representatives of Invest Logan during the closed session. This PowerPoint will need to be tabled to the meeting. There will be a motion on the screen in a moment. Yes. Councillors, you have a procedural motion on the screen. Would someone like to move that for me? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. You'll now have the recommendations on the screen in relation to the presentation and the next steps. Noting that the recommendations thank Invest Logan for their presentation and call for a report to be prepared for a future City Planning, Economic Development and Environment Committee meeting to assess the operational and financial implications to Council of Invest Logan's proposed 5-year strategy. Just being scrolled through on the board, but it is per your agendas that have been provided to you last week. Would someone like to move that motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Bradley, seconded by Mayor Power. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Now we will move on to general business for the Development Assessment Manager, Stephen Ball. If you'd please like to approach the chair. I believe Councillor Bradley has a general business item she'd like to speak to once she finishes chewing her apple. Very healthy snack.
Okay, I've given the meeting staff some wording for a recommendation, which hopefully will be up on the screen.
It will be on the screen momentarily.
So, what we've experienced, well, I have as a councillor, but I believe Councillor Raven has as well, is that residents complain about various cars parking and on private property or on road reserves, but the staff are actually a bit, they can't find out if they're registered or not registered. So hopefully what is up on the screen will help alleviate that. There was a bit of behind the scenes stuff happening where the staff were trying to work it out that we wouldn't be able to go down this road, but this seems to be the only road we can go. I believe that.
Thank you, Stephen. You want to speak to this one?
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Just a little bit of background. So council has always had arrangements with departments, with the Department of Transport and Main Roads in order to gain access to vehicle registration information. With changes to information and privacy rules, those kind of blanket MOUs where organisations, whether it be within departments of the state government or with local authorities, have to be more specific about who can gain access to the information, which is really important. So at the moment, council has an existing memorandum of understanding with the Department of Transport and Roads for its parking enforcement team. The team have already been engaging with the department to look to add our investigation teams to that existing MOU, because you can't just share between teams. That's some of the rules that have changed. So we need to add our teams to that. So for instance, when we go out to a property and we're trying to work out whether a commercial activity is occurring in that property, being able to gain access to those vehicle registration details helps us to understand ownership. And ownership is an important part of the investigation. So what this, as I said, we're already engaging with the department to expand that MOU at an operation level, but the councillor wanted to add this in as a general business item. So we'll continue that process of adding more investigation teams into that existing MOU.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Bradley, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was just cautious what I said because obviously some of the stuff that I know is confidential. and probably likewise with Councillor Raven. So I'm glad that you explained that. Thank you.
Councillors, you have a motion, general business motion on the board, which, oh, sorry, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Trudy. See, but you're already doing the motion's asking, you're already doing that anyway, is that right?
Through the chair, yes, we are.
So if we're already doing it, why are we doing the motion if it's already being done?
Just to provide support to the effort, I imagine. Yeah.
The staff actually sent it to me, so.
Yeah. Weird.
Councillors, you have a motion on the board. Councillor Bradley, you want to move it, I'm assuming. Would someone like to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously with the exception of Councillor Heremiah. How do you vote?
Abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Heremiah. Stephen, you don't have any further general business for us, do you?
No, I don't.
Thank you very much. Councillors, no further GB for Stephen? No worries. Head off back to work, mate. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 4.2, which is the expansion of the e-mobility trial. Before we move into any discussion, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare on this matter? There being none, I know that this is obviously a sensitive issue at the moment, given the recent tragedy that we've had happen to a young person in our city. So I just ask that councillors be mindful of that and be sensitive to what that family is going through and what the community is going through out in Yarra-Billabong. I know it's been a very difficult time, and I'll let Dave open his report.
Through the chair, I'll pass this on to Tate Ryan.
Through the chair. In November 2021, Council agreed to enter an operating agreement with Beam Mobility for a 12-month trial period to provide e-mobility services for hire in designated areas within the city. Beam officially launched its service in Logan on 22nd of December 2021 and established a Meadowbrook warehouse and maintenance facility in January, employing 26 staff. Since entering the operating agreement, data captured from the trial has indicated there is community demand to utilise micromobility modes of transport. Approximately 40,000 rides have occurred, over 70,000 kilometres travelled, and 4,000 people registering for Beam services. Average ride times around 15 minutes, and there has been 4 reported injuries. In addition, there is strong interest from both Beam and the community for the trial to be expanded to more locations throughout Logan. EDNS have recently been approached by a North American-based operator, Helbiz, to establish its first Australian operation in Logan within existing and expanded trial areas across the city. The business is proactive in its early collaboration with Council and has indicated its vehicles and docking stations would be utilised in a way that meets expectations and is beneficial to the community. It is anticipated that to support the launch of the service within the city, a team of 15 staff would be recruited to monitor, service and maintain vehicles daily. To manage increasing usage of e-mobility devices, both the state government and operators such as Beam and Helbiz are continuing to expand safety features and laws. This includes a reduced speed limit on footpaths, improved helmet compliance, increased use of geofencing to support slow riding or no riding areas in high volume pedestrian and safe night precincts, and close collaboration with providers and the community to better educate and train users as to when they sign up and utilise these devices. Providing access to safe and regulated e-scooters to the community through regulated operators provide an alternative to unregulated personal e-scooters that are becoming more common. This report seeks council endorsement to expand e-mobility services to appropriate and desirable areas throughout the city in consultation with councillors, to enter a 12-month trial period with Helbiz, and to extend the current Beam Mobility trial by an additional 6 months. These agreements will facilitate data and information sharing with Council to ensure transparency around services and their responsiveness to community needs and expectations. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Tate. I have a question from Councillor Karansky.
Thank you. Through the chair, this may actually evolve into a GB question, but Councillor Raven did touch on the incident that occurred in Yarrabilba, and of course I'd also ask that Yarrabilba be considered as part of this trial. I note in the report the extensive discussion regarding safety requirements and speed limiting, and how devices could potentially actually even have a connection back to base and get shut down if there's reaching speeds, or if riders are concerned and so on. So I suspect that some of the issues we're experiencing in other parts of the city are by unregulated scooter users and so on. So I actually just wanted to, if I may, just share a request I've had from a resident, which might be relevant. The resident's actually from Yarrabilba, and it's in response to most recent events. But the resident writes, "Hi Laurie, reaching out as a member of the Yarrabilba community about the growing use of e-scooters and motorised mobility equipment. We're wondering if Council can provide an upward voice for regulations in Queensland and Australia to provide speed limiting devices aimed towards children and teens for 5 to 10 years, and safe riding courses or information. I just wonder if perhaps that might be something we could consider as an extension to the work we're doing here, is whether in fact Council should or could have a role in terms of advocacy for safe scooter and mobility scooter riding. And I welcome any feedback you may have with regard to that. But certainly in terms of this report, I'll be supportive today. But I do recognise the increased safety concerns that residents are seeing across the city in terms of e-scooters.
Through the chair, so there's been a document that's been released by the state government that is looking to put some further regulations around e-mobility scooters. So some of the proposals that they're looking at in the short to medium term are reducing the speed of e-mobility scooters down to 12 kilometres per hour. It's currently higher than that. It can be up to 25. They're looking at rolling out some educational training around wearing helmets. They're also looking at increasing the fine for not wearing a helmet. So currently the fine is $130 if you're not wearing a helmet. They're looking to increase that. They're also looking at, so my observation is that there is a lot of issues that relate to private scooters, which are not as regulated. There seems to be the ability for those private scooters to be, I guess, manipulated to go over the speed that they're set at, and the state government's also looking at that. So that's a Minister Bailey initiative from the Department of Transport, which is looking at some short to medium to long term actions.
And thank you, through the chair, with your indulgence. Would Council be in a position to write, perhaps to the Minister, a letter requesting some further advocacy with regard to this, given the circumstances we're experiencing here in the city? Whilst many of us are fans of scooters, it's also with some trepidation as well. And I recognise that the companies are offering already their own regulation and alternatives, but this is a companion piece to really what's already happening out there.
Most definitely. I think that's a fantastic idea. We are participating in a trial, so we should have a voice with any legislation changes.
Thank you, David. If you could just let me know where that lands and with what department and how we'll progress that, that would be awesome. And can I just say, Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate that was outside of the scope, but given the sensitivity of the issues in the community right now, I felt that it was pertinent we raise this today.
Thank you, Councillor Kransky. I think it's an excellent suggestion, and you'll be pleased to know that last year through the LGAQ conference, local government in Queensland was already pushing for higher safety standards, because even before we started this trial, places like Brisbane had identified that there were issues with safety and that there needed to be stronger regulation from the state government to support safe riding rather than supporting the use of them without those regulations. So thank you very much. I'd be very supportive of us advocating further as well. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, I want to start by offering my condolences to the Kokoram family on the loss of their son. That's unimaginable, and I don't know what they're going through right now, but I hope that this debate, as it's portrayed in the media, is respectful to them and their loss. This report is about a commercial business wanting to come into Logan and start their e-scooter hire business here to compete with a business that's currently undergoing a trial. It's also about extending the trial or approving the original application to have Beam scooters operating in my community, which is one of the trial communities. And just to be clear, Council hasn't spent $1 on purchasing scooters. We haven't spent any money on repairing scooters, moving scooters around the community. No ratepayer funds have been used in this trial other than to take complaints, which according to this report have been minimal. Democracy is all about debating ideas, working out the best solution for the community, and we all have our own ideas on what that entails. I propose we approve the extension of the Beam trial for another 6 months, but reject a move to approve a secondary company until we have issues raised by my residents resolved to their satisfaction. Scooters are a fun, easy way to get around the community, and that astounding 40,000 trips figure is absolutely amazing, but it's paving the way for 26 employees, 26 new jobs in Logan. Now, working out of Meadowbrook, that's absolutely fantastic. There's people that are active in that space. It'd be easy to just give that a tick and say that's really important, jobs are important. But there is amenity for our community to consider the risk of placement of these scooters and the sentiment of local residents that I'm about to share with you. I shared these with the manager of ED&S yesterday. I didn't want him to be blindsided by any of the comments, and we've been in constant contact throughout the trial on issues of concern to local residents, and I thank you for your advocacy with Beam, and I thank Beam for actually being reactive to it. So these are some of the comments. I'm afraid of the scooters. They go so fast past me and almost knock me off the footpath. I'm already unsteady on my feet and they frighten me. And that's Wendy, 76 years old, from Kingston. Scooters on the footpath is not a good idea. I'm missing a leg and I can't get off my electric chair to move them out of the way. So I have to go on the road, which is really unsafe because it's always in high traffic areas where they leave a couple of them in a row. And that's a gentleman named Gary. I sent you a photo of him on the road. He's a left leg amputee. From Woodridge. We've got Teresa. There's always scooters left on the intersections of roads where we're supposed to cross, and my older ladies can't safely get through the intersections without having to use their walkers on the road, which is just crazy. I was going to do this in a Scottish accent, but I can't do it really well. These footpaths are meant for pedestrians, not scooters. It's like they're using them as a storage advertising space for companies instead of what they're supposed to be for, and that's Norma, who's the MMW president and retiree from Kingston. I'm a double leg amputee and I've almost fallen several times from my chair trying to go around the scooters being parked on the footpaths. There were 2 in one spot, then another on the entry to the pedestrian crossing, then 5 on the entry to the shops. How are we supposed to be safe when this happens? Say no to scooters, Teresa. That's Glenn, aka Wheels. Teresa, we say no to scooters. The people using them aren't being safe, and feedback from residents is it's a big fat no on the trial going permanent. Logan Central Neighbourhood Watch Meeting, July 2022. I love scooters. It's great to jump on one to head up to the train to get to work. Makes the early morning trip faster than walking in this cold. Macca riding to Trinder Park Station at 5 a.m. each day. I love hire scooters. We jump on them and zip down to the shops for lunch and are back within our break time. Only scary part is when cars come out of driveways and don't see us. And that's students from Woodridge State High School. Getting to the train on time is awesome with these scooters. And that's from Jess, who's a hospitality worker. Why can't scooters go on the road? I don't like walking on the footpaths with a pram and 2 kids with them because the kids don't know to get out of the way quickly and it's scary sometimes. That was a mum from Kingston State School who walks up to Logan Central to access services. These are just some of the comments that I have on the scooter hire trial from local residents. For the immediate concerns, I've been reporting those incidents to you and I'm so grateful that they're being reactive. What I hope is that with the extension of this trial that they become proactive rather than reactive. I think that these are our ratepayers' footpaths and that their concerns must be utmost in our minds when we make decisions on their behalf. Having a new player come into the market without those standards set would be a mistake in my estimation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. I've got myself, Councillor Hall and Mayor Power. I was just going to clarify something with Dave before you, and Councillor Bradley. Before you provided that excellent feedback from your residents. Dave, with Hellbiz, they have a different technology offering. Do they have a no parking feature that prevents scooters from being left somewhere that they're not meant to be, which sounds like a lot of the problems are coming from scooters being left in the middle of footpaths and places like that?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So their technology is slightly more advanced than Beam. One of the thoughts that we had as a team was that if we start seeing a high calibre of safety coming from Halbers, that Beam may follow suit. So that was some of the thoughts behind adding another operator into the mix.
Yeah, I'm keen on competition because it does generate better performance from everybody as they try to offer equal standards. When Councillor Harrimeyer and I received a presentation from Helviz, they spoke to helmet selfies, so you have to take a photo of your helmet on your head before you can ride, and no standing, which means if you leave it parked somewhere like on a footpath in a driveway, you keep getting charged until you move it. So that really motivates people to change their behaviour by hitting them on the hip pocket, essentially. Will it be perfect? I guarantee you no, but will it be better? I would like to think so. Councillor Hall, Power and Bradley.
Look, I'm probably going to bite into the environmental factor of why we need to keep supporting electric mobility. I've recently watched a documentary with David Attenborough, and he was talking about the point of no return, the point of when we can no longer do anything to save the environment. And part of our obligation as a human race is to make sure that we move away from previous carbon fossil fuels. And one way we can do that is by encouraging, as a population, as a government, electric mobility and moving into that path. So I think we need to do everything we can to ensure that happens in our city. I personally believe there needs to be competition in this market. I think what Beam has done is very good, but we can't let any one organisation have a monopoly in any certain industry within any city. And I believe by bringing in Helbiz, we can actually create a bit of monopoly. And what you'll find is things will only become better because of that, because they'll hold each other to a standard, and the public will have an option to choose one over the other. And that is good because it means they'll be competing for customers' business, meaning they'll be making their services better in order to get the customers. So, I would probably endorse bringing in the Helbiz on a 12-month trial lease to compete against Beam, and hopefully we can get a better outcome with the end result heading towards a greener city.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a tough decision, and I thank Councillor Lane for providing all that information, because I was going to actually ask the councillors involved to provide the information they're getting from the public. So I thank you for that. There are so many good reasons to approve this, but there's also the ongoing possibilities of people coming to grief, and we all know what's happening in Brisbane, and I visit my son quite regularly, and he's an active user of electric scooters, but they are scary. I've been around the city and they whiz past you, and you think, geez, I'm glad I didn't divert slightly to the right, otherwise I would have been knocked over. The only thing that has me on board here is it's a trial. My concern, obviously, on the other side of it is that there is a lack of public transport in Logan, and I know areas like Yarrabilba and such, Flagstone, where there is a real lack of public transport, and there is a lot of need to get around, and cars are an expensive commodity, particularly having a second car in the family, and it enables people to get around a lot better. I understand there is obviously a positive part of this story, and but if it wasn't for the trial part, I wouldn't be in agreement with this. I think it's a good step up to actually trial it and see how it goes. Bearing in mind, hearing the news of the young lad coming to grief, sympathetic to the parents of what they're going through, but it wasn't on one of those scooters. It was on a private scooter, and I do recognise that it says from 16 and above, which encourages me to know that the reliability of it being misused or being driven by people of underage. I certainly would not encourage this, and there's obviously safety features involved. But still a hard decision, but I will support it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave, just to be clear, does Council have a regulating authority in controlling whether or not these organisations start offering their service in our city?
Through the Chair, currently no.
So essentially the MOU is the best way to make sure that they have standards that they have to comply to because they've signed an agreement with us.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering if I've got similar views as the mayor, but I'm just curious if you could talk to speed limitations in built-up areas, like where there's lots of businesses, etc. Can you talk to that, please?
So through the Chair, when they're looking at built-up areas around schools, I think the speed limit is currently 10 kilometres, but that may also be reviewed as part of the state government plan to reduce it down. So when it's in open footpaths like the Slakes Creek footpath area, it's 25. But again, the state government is looking at reducing all of those speed limits.
Okay, so if it was, for example, in Cinderella Drive, what would the speed limit there be?
It would currently be currently be 25.
Okay, thank you. I ask because I have seen private scooters in Cinderella Drive, for example, and it was scary. But I am very grateful to hear that there are limitations in more built-up areas. Thank you.
Well, just one thing that the state government's also looking at is allowing e-scooters to operate in bicycle lanes too. So currently they are not able to do that. So that's another thing that the state government is exploring. I think it's worth me circulating the latest state government policy paper post-committee for the councillors' information.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Councillor Bradley, for those questions. I've got Councillor Murphy, Wilcox and Herrmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, condolences to our Yarra family. My heart goes out to you today. Mr. Radich, Beam, the e-scooter, they have a e-scooter school in at South Bank where they promote education of people about safer scooter riding. Could this become part of the trial here in Logan as well? Brisbane City Council requires the company to incentivise and take proactive steps to promote safer riding, so could we not do that here as well?
Through the Chair, so we've been in discussion with, so this was a discussion I had with Councillor Lane. So Councillor Lane is the Divisional Councillor and Beam will be looking to hold educational safety course within Logan Central, and we can roll that out across the city.
Thank you, Mr. Radich. I think it'd be a great idea. Obviously, we can't control the personal side of things, but that's a policing matter. But everything that we could possibly do within Beam and our other trial company would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. Just a quick question. With this trial, is it in the same area as the current Beam trial? Couldn't work that one out.
Through the chair, yes. They would like to start initially where Beam is operating, and both organisations are open to expanding to other areas as we explore and extend the network to logical places.
Could we not give them a different space to trial in so that everything isn't concentrated and we don't have so much, I don't know, litter, one might put it, having all of the scooters in one place could we not ask them to trial it in a different area like we have spoken about in other areas?
So through the chair, we did meet with councillors individually to ask where they would like the beam and Halbers to expand to, and that feedback will be fed back through. So I guess first of all, Halbers needs to understand whether there is a level of support for them to operate within the city. Beam understands that there's a level of support, so we are now looking at, based on the feedback from councillors, an investigation area where they might want to operate, because obviously these are commercial decisions that they need to make, and then we'll come back to council and talk to the councillors about where they have made their final determination.
So if we're to support this today, are we supporting where it goes? Because for me, I would prefer it if it was in a different place to where Beam is. I would prefer it to move across the city, have it in a completely different area so that not everything's all in one spot.
So they will be operating in the same area that Beam currently operates in, but Halbers will also be operating in other areas across the city.
No further questions? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Heremiah, then Councillor Stemp.
I yield my time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heremiah, Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one. So at the end of the trial, what happens then? Do you come back with another report for us, or what's the steps after a trial? Just a matter of interest.
So through the Chair, recommendation 4 says that I'll report back to council with the outcomes of the trial. So one of the reasons why we extended the Beam trial for another 6 months is that Halbers and Beam's trial will end at the exact same time, so we can give you guys a holistic view of how many incidents have happened, have there been serious incidents, what the take-up of rides in certain areas were. So that's the recommendation 5.
But in terms of reports coming back to us for decision-making, that won't happen after that, after the trial as such? They just carry on as a commercial entity? Is that how it works?
So depending on what the trial comes back with and depending on your decision, we could enter into a long-standing MOU. So if there is support, where they would constantly be providing us quarterly information. Otherwise, there could be a decision that maybe we would encourage them not to operate in certain areas because there have been issues. So I guess those are the decisions that council will make at that 12-month point.
Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Councillor Bannon, then Councillor Russell.
Thank you, through the chair. I think there's going to be chaos with them because you do education driving a car and have to get a valid licence and there's fines and look how people drive cars. So that's a problem. But once you have if you have the trial, people do expect them it's going to be hard to pull it once you give someone a taste for it, good and bad. So if the trial goes through and it causes nothing but heartache, getting hit at 20k an hour, or if I run into you at 15k an hour, you'll feel it. Like, is there any way, do we have any responsibility or control that we do the trial, it goes bad, we don't want them, can you stop it, or do you got no control over that at all? Because I know that the Gold Coast, I think, took back about 20 or 30 and tossed them all because they were left alone around. Gold Coast Council, they actually, well, they did chuck them in a bin, I'm pretty sure, but anyway.
So through the chair, there are some councils that have completely banned e-scooters. So Sydney has completely banned e-scooters, so we could look at what mechanism they use to stop e-scooters. But I guess Halbers and Beam coming to us is they're wanting to have a warm relationship with us. They're operating with our blessing even though they don't need it. So I suspect that if there are bad results and there's a bad sentiment from the council, they may choose to move elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Bannon. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I think that your answer there essentially just covered the question that I had, that it's essentially a positive relationship that we're encouraging here, rather than yes, you can come into our city. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just wondering, in the case of bad behaviour, eyewitness account is mostly probably the best way to say that, to determine if someone is behaving badly or not. Is there any way that the scooters can be marked so members of the public who believe that they're being pushed around on footpaths or whatever can see scooter number 12 or something at this time did this thing to me, and they can report it to the company so that that user might be banned for a month or two or whatever it is? Is there any way around that, just to make people feel a bit better that, hey, if someone is actually behaving badly, they'll be held to account, so to speak, and it is less likely to happen again because they're going to be punished for it?
Through the Chair, that currently exists. So if there is a series of bad behaviours, that person will be banned from using an e-scooter. So it's built into, I guess, the governance model of these e-scooters. So if there's incidents, people aren't wearing helmets all the time, people are crashing, they actually are banned from using these scooters for a period of time, I believe.
Dave, could we provide them feedback that we'd like to see an identifying number on the scooter, though? Because if it might not be an incident when you get zipped past at 20 k's an hour, but it might scare the bejesus out of an elderly resident or a resident who has movement restrictions. And if it might not be an incident according to the AI because they just kept going, but if you could see, oh, yep, that was almost like a registration sticker. So it's like, oh, yep, that's scooter 24. And when they call Beam or they email Beam, they can say, hey, scooter 24 nearly killed me today. Can you please do something about that?
Through the Chair, we can ask the question to Beam. I imagine they must have an asset number associated with each of the scooters, so potentially.
I'm sure they do. It's just about making it visible, so a member of the public can go, that scooter at this location. I'm sure Beam can figure it out if you give them a time and a date, but you might not have the exact time.
Yep.
Because you're so shaken up by it.
Certainly ask the question.
Good suggestion, Councillor Fraser. Councillors, are there any more questions? Thank goodness. We have a motion on the screen. Would someone like to move this motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Heremiah. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously with the exception of Councillor Lane.
Against.
Councillor Bannon.
Against.
Can you say it in the microphone, please, Councillor Bannon?
Against, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bannon, and Councillor Stem.
Against.
Thank you very much. Councillors, that brings us to the end of that report. We'll now move on to item 4.3, which is the Mayor's Local Jobs and Skills Task Force update. Before I hand over to Dave to speak to his report, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare at this time? There being none, I now let Dave speak to the report, or hand off to Tate as he sees fit.
Through the Chair, I'll speak to this one. So, I guess we just wanted to circle back to the councillors. Just over 12 months ago, Council endorsed jobs and Mayor's task force, and we're reporting back of the outcomes of that. It's, in my opinion, it's made a huge difference to the city. So, we set a KPI of a placement of people of 50. People annually per year. This is a space councils generally don't play in. Our 50 KPIs per year have been exceeded. We have got 121 placements per year, and really meaningful placements. So people that have been long-term unemployed now have full-time jobs, able to support their family. Young people that never thought that there was a pathway to certain types of employment now have that. On top of the KPIs, we've run bus tours. We're planning on holding a Mayor's Task Force Jobs Fair specifically aimed at the trades, because I know that there's a real issue getting young kids into the trades. So I guess the purpose of this report was to circle back on the KPIs, and one of the recommendations is to write to Minister Di Farmer to talk about the success that this this program has had, because the Mayor and I and Director Hanson met with Di Farmer early on in the piece, and she was very interested in it. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave. I've got questions from the Mayor, myself and Councillor Bradley.
No, it's not a question. It's more of a statement. As you know, one thing that Logan has is a lot of young people. And if you know what's going on in the world at the moment, there's a shortage of people. There's a lot of need out there, and providing the connection between the dots of employers and young people out there, and you can quite clearly see there is a need for this, and it's very successful. There is certainly a need in South East Queensland for decentralisation, because Logan is a place of people, particularly young people. Young people are looking for employment, and of course there are a lot of companies out there who want people. They can't get people. So I think they need to wake up and recognise that they need to come to the people, because what's going to happen is people are going to get selective, and people are going to avoid going to town because the amount of costs involved, particularly petrol being at $2 something a litre. I think this is not just this report. It's indicative of how good Logan's travelling and what we've got. And I think, you know, factories and employers should wake up to the fact that if they need people, they need to relocate out in the suburbs and provide those. There's no reason why they go into the city. They're paying exorbitant price to be in the city, and that's not where the people are. They're out there in the suburbs. It's a great report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions either. I actually just want to give you credit for coming up with this initiative. The idea of something as simple as having a staff member who actively finds businesses that are seeking for staff and finding staff who are actively looking for work is a really simple one, but a brilliant one. Paul Bailey is the staff member who runs the task force. He is the task force. He does an amazing job. Sometimes I will send him an email while talking to a resident on the phone who said, you know, my son, my brother, my husband is looking for work. He's trying to call them before I get off the phone with them, and I'm only on the phone for 30 seconds because it's right at the end of the call. That's how quick he is. Just yesterday I had business from outside of Logan contacting me saying, we understand that Logan City Council has a program for finding people who are willing and motivated to work. How do we get involved in that? What does it cost to sign up? We could start charging people for this service. So this is how brilliant the idea is, that it's in such high need and demand that the standard platforms like Seek and other things like that, where you do pay, and you get a lot of applicants who unqualified, not in that they don't have the capacity to do the work, that no one's checking to make sure that they are a bona fide applicant who wants to work, not just kicking tyres or testing the market. So this is an amazing service, and full credit to the Mayor for driving this task force and coming up with it. It is, as more and more people find out about it, it will become more and more popular, and I imagine that Paul will get insanely busy by the end of this year, because businesses looking for people who are willing to work. Logan's greatest asset is its people. We have a huge workforce that is ready to go with people that are coming, turning 16, 13, 14, 15 every day of the week and want to work. They're motivated to work, they want to support their families and have a better future, and this is helping them achieve that. So great work, Mr. Mayor, and great work to Paul and the team. I'm very, very proud when our council can do things like this. Councillor Bradley and then Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. I suppose I want to give a bit of rap to the Mayor as well for this initiative. But I'm just really curious if, through the Chair, if you could talk to the businesses from Meadowbrook, Slacks Creek, Loganholme, Beenleigh, Park Ridge, and your target students that you took on the tour were from Logan Lee Estates High, Marsden High, Yarra-Bilba. How do you determine the businesses and the students, and what's the focus there?
Through the chair, it's a mixture of demand from businesses directly reaching out to us, and they have a clear indication that they need assistance. And with schools, it's reaching out through our broad network. We are connected to, I would say, all the schools in Logan, and we make offers to them to participate, and depending on their availability and their resourcing at that particular time, would either participate or choose to do it at another time. So there is that ongoing discussion, and if they miss out one time, there'll be more opportunities in the future for schools to engage.
Okay, so you are communicating with every school in the city, is that correct?
It depends on which program, but for example, Paul, who Councillor Raven referred to, has an email group where offers are sent to all these advisors that work at the schools throughout Logan,
Right.
proposing opportunities and communicating with those operators directly at the schools.
Okay, I'm just curious because at the, I can't think what the proper name of it is, sorry, so someone might be able to correct me. At the youth forum that was held not too long ago, the youth were talking about how they really want to get involved with some sort of hospitality training or something like that. And these were kids, our youth, across the city. So I don't know if you tap into that audience as well.
Yes, I would say we do, but obviously all schools operate differently and different times, and people have access to information differently. But this is a new program, relatively new, and there's a lot of work for us to do to continue to strengthen those connections and also provide more opportunities for schools and students across a range of sectors. Yes.
I will be talking to the schools in the area I represent and just check that they've been receiving those emails. And
Excellent. We're happy to reach out and show you some of our contacts within those schools as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilcox.
Thanks. Councillor Bradley went down the path that I was going down. It was the Logan Youth Action Group that you were at. Yes. And the students that were there did say, how do we hear about this? We don't hear about this. They sat there and they actually said that they'd never heard of the CRANK program because the schools hadn't told them about it and that sort of thing. So again, I constantly see the same schools, and I know I harp on this and I don't want to, but I'm getting to the point now where I want to see who you're contacting, what schools are there, because Flagstone's never there. And when I talk, because I constantly talk, because I still know so many teachers there, no, we don't know about this, we don't know about it. And the new guidance officer that's there, she's come out of Browns Plains and Park Ridge, and she's there, but she's still now not hearing about it, even though she heard of all of these programs that were being run in Browns Plains and Park Ridge, and we were involving them. They're still not reaching there. So I know that the guidance officer, the ILO, I'm not sure about the DPs, but I know that the information, if it's getting there, it's still not getting filtered down. Flagstone doesn't go to anything that we ever offer because it's never there for them to actually accept. I think in the past, when I was teaching there and I was head of senior schooling, they used to go to the Careers Day, and I'm pretty sure they still do, but that's about it. That's pretty much all they hear about. So again, all of these programs, and I think it's wonderful, but it's still not filtering down. And without bagging it, Marsden's always there. Like, they are always there because they are like the premier state high school in all of Queensland at the moment and that sort of thing, which is fantastic. But I don't want to see it focused solely on one city and giving every opportunity to those kids, because most of my kids in Div 11 can't go there because they're out of catchment. And it's almost like that's a stopgap, and we're preventing all of these other schools that can't go because they're out of catchment, and that sort of thing. So I don't want to start calling for reports going, show me what schools we're contacting, show me who the contacts are, and that sort of thing, because I can filter through it pretty quick. But yeah, but if you're going to go with Councillor Bradley and show her who the contacts are, I'd like to see them too, please.
I'll let Dave Hanson respond.
Thanks, Councillor Wilcox. I'm more than happy to share the contact list. I think that's the way the program will be be strengthened over time. We will potentially run into a capacity issue though, so we'll have to map that out in collaboration with the councillors around, you know, who next and where to from here. But the starting point is fantastic to have those conversations. So let's just share the list around and get your feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. Manpower.
Yeah, I just want to elaborate and say we've only got one person, and that person can't do any more than what he's doing. And to see the success in the report, and some of these jobs will set these people up for life. When I went to that manufacturing plant and the amount of money that some of these tradespeople are getting, I'll tell you what, why go to university? And construction jobs. I don't know if you realised in the paper the other day, the hourly rate of construction people. These are some of the best paid people in Australia now. So I don't want to hear complaints about this unless you're prepared to put more money into the system and to put more people on the job, because that person can only do so much. And that's it. So budget initiative next year if you want to see the program expand. But until then, we just let this gentleman work as hard as he possibly can and get the best results.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good reminder that it was essentially a trial that we didn't know how it would go or if it would be successful. So, but more than happy to have the information circulated and spread out. As you know, not all schools are created equal, and some of them respond very quickly, and sometimes first bird gets the worm. But we'll make sure that everyone's got the same opportunity, which is what I think you're asking for, Councillor Wilcox. Just to also clarify, it's not just about young people. So, and this is a great piece of insight for councillors. So, literally in the Crestmead Marsden closed Facebook group, someone said, "Hey, I'm looking for work. Minimum 50s. These are all the tickets I've got." I took a screenshot of that message, no contact details. Paul found him the next day and had him working by the end of the week. Like that. That's how effective this guy is. So. There is a great opportunity for councillors to actually support their communities by being engaged, by seeing these posts. And I know we all see them and think, oh, what can I do to help? Well, you can take a screenshot, you can send it to Paul, and he'll do the rest. So having that level of service is amazing. The Mayor is right. When we went to Frontline Manufacturing, the recruitment bloke stood there and said to all of the grade 10s that were there, if you do this certificate this year, I'll give you a full-time apprentice next year, and I'll do it for the full 4 years. And immediately 3 kids put their hands up and said, what's the name of that certificate? Where do I do it? So you know those kids are motivated. And they will likely have the apprenticeship roles because you just can't get staff. They're desperate for staff. And they want to lock them down early by giving them great opportunities. And so this is a fantastic job, Mr. Mayor, and I look forward to seeing it expanded in the future if it continues to kick so many goals. Any further questions, councillors? We have a motion on the board. The Mayor is moving it. Councillor Kerensky is seconding it. Please stand by. We have a technical issue. I believe you've all read your agendas, though, so if you'd like to vote, councillors, please raise your hand if you're in support of the motion. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 4.4, which is a confidential report for the proposed lease of council land in Logan Central. Before we move into discussions, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare? There being none, Dave, would you like to speak to your report? And then we'll move into confidential.
Through the chair. So in 2021, an aerial adventure tourism operator, Tree Climb, based in South Australia, approached council with the intention to utilise one of council's public parks to operate their business venture. With guidance from various branches.
Not in confidential yet, Tate.
Oh.
Councillors, seeing as Tate wants to jump straight into the confidential parts of the report, would anyone like to would everyone like to move into confidential, please? I know it's considered necessary to take discussion of this report into closed session as it relates to commercial and confidence matters. And we've got a nice blush out of Tate. Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Kerensky has moved us into confidential. Would someone like to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is carried unanimously with the exception of Councillor Hall.
Against.
And Councillor Heremiah?
Against.
Councillor Bannon, did you want to go in? Did I see your hand go up? Oh, it is. Sometimes it is, yeah. Thank you, councillors. We are now in closed session. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, councillors, for your debate, and I'm disappointed to let members of the public know that some excellent puns were made in that debate, and hopefully we get to hear them again in public one day. Councillors, you have a motion on the screen, or you will very shortly. Excellent. Would someone like to move this motion? Thank you, Councillor Lane. Would someone like to second this motion? Thank you, Councillor Stemp. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, that brings us to the end of the Economic Development and Strategy Manager's reports. Is there any general business for David Radich? Dave, do you have any general business for us?
No, I do not.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 5.1, which is the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Strategy for 2022 to 2032. Before we move into discussion, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they'd like to declare on this item? There being none, I'd now like to ask the Health, Environment and Waste Manager, Mr. Michael Asnikar, to speak to his report.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, councillors. This report presents the outcomes of the recent public consultation process and seek Council's endorsement of the final version of the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Strategy 2022 to 2032. So just to recap, the development of a waste strategy is a legislative obligation on all councils under the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act, and public consultation is also a requirement of that legislation. The public consultation on our draft was undertaken during April and May of this year, and all the feedback received is detailed in the report. Several changes were made to the final version of the strategy in response to the feedback received. The strategy provides high-level direction for waste management and resource recovery over the next 10 years, and one of the primary aims of the strategy is to reduce waste to landfill over the next 10 years, and consequently our future landfill levy costs and landfill disposal costs through projects such as investigating a dedicated food organics and waste and garden waste organic service, establishing a citywide plan for the upgrade of our waste facilities using modern designs to meet population growth and make it as convenient as possible for residents to drop off items for recycling rather than disposal, reducing contamination in our recycling bins, continuing our comprehensive community waste education program, maximising the value of our recyclables and leading by example by procuring and using recyclable products, and supporting circular economy businesses where we keep materials in the productive economy as long as possible and preferably locally. The strategy contains a comprehensive suite of implementation actions with the aim of meeting the state government's waste reduction and recycling targets, and the recommendation of this report is that the final strategy be adopted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Beautiful. No puns there, Michael. Bit disappointed.
No, this is serious business.
I might have to abstain on that basis. No, just kidding. Would anyone like to move the report? Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Seconded by Councillor Murphy. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously, including the Mayor, who has just walked back into the room. That brings us to... Not present. That's okay. Not present. That marks the end of the Health, Environment and Waste Manager's reports. Is there any general business for Michael? Michael, do you have any general business for us? No? Excellent. Thank you very much. Back off to work with you, councillors. That brings us to the end of the agenda, and the meeting is closed at 10:46. The City Infrastructure Committee will start in 10 minutes.